Just halfway through this journey of our life, I reawoke to find myself inside a dark wood, way off course, the right road lost. How difficult a task it is to tell what this wild, harsh, forbidding wood was like. And then, having snatched some rest for wearied limbs, I descended down a slope, and there, near where the ground began to rise, there was a leopard. The hour, the season's sweetness stirred in me high hopes of this bright-coated animal, but not enough to check the fear I felt to see a lion looming into sight. Head held high, so crazed with hunger that the air itself appeared to quake with horror. Next there came a she-wolf whose emaciated form embodied, as it seemed, all craving known. Then a presence whom long silence had made faint materialized before me as I watched. No matter what you are, an apparition or an actual man, have pity on me.
I am no man, though man was what I was. I was a poet and sang of that just man Anchises' son.
Are you that Virgil then? O you, who are the glory and the light of other poets, you see what beast has caused my turning back? Lord, famed for wisdom, save me from her now.
This animal that you complain about lets no one pass along her path. Instead, she persecutes them, brings about their death. I think it best, considering your plight, that you should follow me. I'll be your guide and lead you out through the eternal world, where you shall hear the helpless shriek and see the torment of the spirits of past times as each cries out against the second death.
With day departing, so the darkened air relieved the living creatures of the earth of their laborious tasks, and I, alone, prepared myself for my ordeal. Through me you reach the city of despair. Through me you reach eternity of grief. Through me you reach the region of the lost. Justice it was moved my high architect. Divine omnipotence created me. Transcendent wisdom and primordial love. Before me only endless things were made, and I too shall endure without an end. You that enter, cast all hope aside. These sombre-coloured words were what I saw inscribed high above an entranceway.
We've come to the place I've told you of, in which you'll see that miserable brood who've lost the benefit of intellect.
Then, ahead of me, I saw a crowd assembled on a great wide river's bank. And there, an old man, hair gone white with age, came steering straight towards us in a boat, exclaiming,
"Woe to you, perverted souls! Don't ever hope to look on heaven now. I've come to ship you to that other shore, to everlasting shadow, fire and ice."
Demonic Sharon, eyes like glowing coals, makes signals to them, gathers them all up and hits out at the stragglers with his oar.
My son, all those who perish in God's anger now converge upon this spot from every land on earth.
Then, after he'd said this, the bleak terrain shook with such violence that even now I sweat again with recollected fear. The tear-soaked ground gave out a wind which flashed vermilion, with a light that numbed all sense, and I collapsed, as though engulfed by sleep. Deep bursts of thunder broke the heavy sleep which reigned within my head.
Let us go now, for the long way calls us on.
He went ahead and made me enter too the first ring that encircles the abyss.
You better know now before we carry on, that though these did not sin, their worthiness could not suffice. If they preceded Christianity, they had not a fitting way to worship God. I myself am classed as one of these.
There, straight ahead on that enamelled lawn, the spirits of the great were shown to me. I saw Electra in fine company, among whom Hector and Aeneas, both I knew, and Caesar, armed and falcon-eyed. Then, nearest him, in front of all the rest, were Socrates and Plato. Next I saw Diogenes and Thales and Empedocles as well, and Heraclitus, yes, and Zeno too. From that initial circle I went down, descending to the second, which contains, enclosing as it does, a lesser space, a harsher pain to sting them till they shriek. There, horrifying Minos snarls upon the threshold, scrutinizing sins. Before him always stands a crowd, and each comes forward for their verdict in his turn. They speak, they hear, and then they are hurled below. The hellish hurricane unresting sweeps the swirling souls in its rapacious wake. A scene of weeping, howling and lament, where they revile divine omnipotence. It dawned on me that those who undergo such torture must be carnal sinners, who submit all reason to their appetite. "O poet," I began, "I'd like to speak with those that fly together as a pair."
You'll see, when they draw nearer us, if you request them by that love of theirs, the force that drives them on, that they will come.
If you've such a keen desire to know the story of our love, how it took root, I'll talk of it as one who speaks and weeps. One day, for our amusement, we began to read the tale of Lancelot, how love had made him prisoner. We were alone, without the least suspicion in our minds, but more and more our eyes were forced to meet, our faces to turn pale by what we read. One passage in particular became the source of our defeat, when we read how the infatuated lover saw the smile he'd longed to see and kissed it. This man here, all trembling as he did it, kissed my mouth. The book was Galahad.
As this first spirit spoke, the other wept. For pity, like a dying man, I swooned and fell as bodies fall that fall down dead. The circle I've just entered is the third, where endless rain monotonously falls in changeless measure, cold and bleak and hard. Here Cerberus, a vicious mongrel beast, makes triple-throated dog-like barking sounds toward the sunken people down below. Here he slays the spirits, flays and quarters them. My guide, then spreading out his hands, grabbed up some earth and having packed it into his fists, he hurled it straight inside the craving throats. On top of ghosts squashed down by the pounding rain, we passed and trod upon their emptiness, although they had the look of solid flesh. They formed a layer spread upon the ground, except for one who suddenly arose, and as we moved in front of him sat up.
Oh, you who are conducted through this hell, recall me if you can. Your citizens nicknamed me Chaco Hawk. It's through the damning sin of gluttony you see me here, diminished by the rain. And I am not the only saddened soul, but all these others for the same offense pay the same price.
We went on round along the curving road until we reached the point where it descends. And there met Plutus, man's arch-enemy.
Peep seating a leppy. Peep seating a leppy.
The sage, to reassure me, said,
Don't let your fear deter you. For whatever powers he has, he can't prevent our climbing down these rocks.
And here I witnessed even greater crowds, who strained their chests to trundle weights along. They clashed and crashed. Each group then suddenly wheeled round and rolled their stones back. One lot screamed,
Why save?
The others shouted back,
Why spend?
Master, now explain, who are these souls?
They were clergymen and popes and cardinals who make of avarice their masterpiece. So now, my son, you see the short-lived farce played out for wealth, for all that mankind squabbles over it.
Then we crossed the circle to its outer edge. And there we passed above a spring which drains into the marsh that men call Styx. I stopped and stared, astonished at the sight of mud-bespattered people in that swamp. They fought each other, not with hands alone, but with their heads and chests and feet as well. Their teeth they used to shred each other's flesh.
Now here, my son, you see the souls of those whom rage consumed, and there's another fact you ought to know, that underneath the water there are more whose sighing makes it seethe and froth. Embedded in the slime they chant.
Above, morose, in that sweet sun-enlivened air, we nurse the sullen vapor in our hearts. Now our moroseness fills this black morass.
I saw right then a tiny boat that skimmed the water straight to where we stood. A single oarsman steering it. He yelled,
We've got you now, you crime-infested soul!
Now, Phlegeus, you waste your breath this time. You'll have us in your charge no longer than it takes to cross the mire.
And as we rode the stagnant waterway, a mud-caked figure loomed in front of me and cried,
Who are you? Come before your time.
And I replied, Yes, come, but not to stay. My master promptly pushed him back and shouted,
Off! Go join the other dogs. This fellow was all arrogance in life, with no good deeds to grace his memory. How many up above count themselves great kings, who wallow here like swine in filth?
Soon after this, I saw him torn apart by mud-encrusted souls. Then the gentle master said,
"And here, my son, the city fast approaches that men call Dis, a great garrison of bitter citizens."
They shouted harshly, "Who's this without death? Who passes through the kingdom of the dead?"
The route's well known to me, you may be sure. This marsh that breathes out such a potent stench lies all about this city of despair, which we can enter now by force alone.
Then 3 hellish furies smeared with blood sprang up, whose bodies, woman-like in shape and stance, and whose hair was tiny serpents and horned snakes that twined about each hideous forehead. They beat their palms and raked their fingernails across their breasts.
"Medusa, come, let's have him turned to stone."
Just to glimpse the Gorgon, if she shows herself, would mean you'd lose all hope of going back again.
Then I saw 1,000 ruined souls or more, who scattered from the path of one that moved dry-footed as he passed across the Styx. He reached the gate, and with a tiny staff he opened it, and no resistance came. So we moved off towards the citadel in safety. I see encircling me a spacious plain, beset with torment and harsh cruelty, for flames were spread about amongst the tombs. "Master," I said, "what are these people here?"
These are arch-heretics, and those of every sect who followed them. These tombs bear larger loads than you'd believe, for like here is interred with like. Each grave is heated to its own precise degree.
Then he turned off to the right.
Look now at Farinata, risen there.
He'd now stretched upright, chest and brow thrown back, as though he had a high contempt for hell. High on a steep bank circling precipice, here the foul accumulated stench that belched up from the deep abyss below compelled us to retreat behind the lid of a massive tomb. And there, upon the broken chasm's edge, lay sprawled the infamy of Crete, the Minotaur. On catching sight of us, he gnawed his flesh as if compelled by some deep inward rage. Then a file of centaurs galloped on patrol, all armed with arrows, as they would have been when riding to the chase on the earth above.
By that power by which my steps proceed along so rough a road, assign to us a member of your band to lead the way, who'll show us where the fording place is found, and carry my companion on his back, who, since he is not a spirit, cannot fly.
Reliably escorted, we moved off and skirted this vermilion cauldron's rim, whose contents shrieked so loudly as they boiled. We were heading into forest land, through which there lay no trace of any path. It's here the loathsome harpies build their nests. Their wings are wide, their faces and their throats are human, and their feet are armed with claws, and they give out their mournful noises high in hideous trees. Then my master said,
If you snap off just one small branch from any of these growths, you'll see how you have failed to grasp the truth.
So I put out my hand a little way, and from a massive thorn bush plucked a twig, at which the trunk cried out, "Why tear at me?" Then, after turning dark with stains of blood, it cried a second time, "Why mangle me? Have you no sense of pity in your heart? We were once men, and now we're turned to sticks." And then two figures from the left, both gashed, both naked, and in such a headlong flight they tear through all the tangles of the wood. Black bitches overran the wood behind, precipitous like starving hounds let loose. They sank their teeth in him, then piece by piece they tore his flesh apart and carried off the miserable limbs. We came then to the boundary. Vengeance of God. Herd upon herd I saw of naked souls, whose tears declared the depth of their distress. Broad, drifting flakes of fire rained slowly down across the whole expanse of sand, like snow in mountain places on a windless day. We then happened on a troop of souls who moved alongside the embankment, and I underwent this group's strange scrutiny till one of them discovered who I was, and, clutching at the corner of my cloak, he cried aloud, "Why, what a miracle!" Then, as he reached towards me with his arm, I tried to see beneath his facial burns. "Sir Brunetto, is it you?" I asked him which members of his company would be the most distinguished, the most eminent. "All of them were either clergymen or brilliant men of letters, well known too, all blemished by one sin." Then I saw up through that thick obscurity of air a shape ascending.
Now see the monster with the pointed tail.
After these few words he motioned to the thing to come on shore.
If you are to bring away an adequate impression of this ring, I'll ask this creature here to lend its powerful shoulders for us to use. Now, Geryon, move off, descend by gradual degrees and circle wide.
On our right I saw new agonies and new tormentors doling out the pain. Horned demons follow them with massive whips and scourge them cruelly along the rock. So Geryon, descending to the depths, deposits us far down below. We came to where a crowd of people plunged in excrement that seemed to be the sewage of the world's latrines. And then one yelled at me, "What is it gives your eyes more appetite for me than all these other filthy tramps?" "Alessimo da Luca is your name. That's why I stare at you more than the rest." O Simon Magus, and you Simonists, despicable disciples who, from greed for gold and silver, prostitute God's goods that virtuous men by right should have and hold. And there behind me, coming up the ridge, I saw a demon at full pelt. He shouted,
"Hey, male branch, here's one of Santa Zita's aldermen."
Then they spiked him with 100 prongs. Then my master shouted at them,
"Make way, for up in heaven it is willed that I must show a stranger this wild road."
And then the demon said to them,
"This man must not be harmed."
Then he announced to us,
"You can't go on much further by this route. The bridge lies all smashed to pieces in the pit below. I'm sending out some members of my troop in that direction. Go with them, they'll not do you any harm."
So off we went with that demonic band, and every now and again they would impale some sinner along the way. Then they would argue and fight each other. Silent, alone, with our companions gone, we went on. "Master, I fear the demons will turn on us. I'm convinced they're after us already. Yes, I'm sure I hear them even now." And then, on the height above us, there they were. Nothing now to be alarmed about, since that same heavenly providence confines them to it. We found enamelled people down below. They circled slowly and sobbed and looked defeated and downcast. The mantles that they wore were of solid lead. What strenuous vestments for eternity. "Oh, friars," I said, "these wicked acts of yours," but said no more. A figure caught my eye, one crucified by 3 stakes to the ground. Fra Catalino, looking on, explained,
"That nailed-down soul you're staring at advised the Pharisees. It was expedient for one man to be martyred for them all."
We stepped down at the far end of the bridge, and then a ditch lay open to my sight. Within I saw a frightening mass of snakes. Amidst this cruel, sad and seething mass went people running naked, terrified and past hope of a hiding place. We left the place by means of stairs, where, as we took our solitary route amongst the crags and boulders of the ridge, the foot could not advance without the hand. No barrel burst apart with scattered planks, gaped wider than the soul I saw, split down from where his chin was to where he farts. And since my whole attention was on him, he then with his hands opened up his chest and said,
"See how I tear myself apart. See now how Mahomet is a mangled thing."
Another soul had his throat slashed and his nose sheared off, and said,
"O you who guilt has not condemned, if ever you return to see that lovely plain that slopes away from Vercelli right to Macabo, be sure to make it known to Phanos that 2 of his best men will be weighed down and bundled overboard, victims of a vile intrigue."
Then I saw, and I seemed to see it still, a corpse who moved along and held its severed head up. Then it spoke these words.
Now you see the ruin of my punishment, you who with living breath review the dead. My name is Bertrand de Born, and because I parted a father and a son, my brain is parted from its source of life.
The multitude and these outlandish wounds had made my eyes so drunkenly confused they longed to stay and weep. But Virgil said,
"What is it that you are staring at so hard?"
"Within that hollow place on which my eyes were riveted is someone who shares my own blood." We walked on till we reached the point where from the ridge we'd see the bottom of the next ravine. Fantastic cries of pain assaulted me, like arrows but with pity as their barbs, and I used both my hands to shield my ears. As these applied their nails incessantly to grate their flesh, whose fierce and raging itch admitted no alternative relief. And we listened to the stricken souls who had not the strength enough to raise themselves, their bodies blotched with scabs from head to toe. Then one said,
"That foul fiend is Giovanni Cicciaccia, dashing round to vent his rabid fury on the rest. And that's vicious Mira's ghost from ancient times. She came to be her father's intimate. Self-falsified, she went to lie with him in sin, impersonating someone else."
Here, the bank that circumscribed the pit had towering above it upper halves of horrifying giants.
Raphael, me, Mich, Zabi, Almi.
My leader, looking up at him, observed,
"Stick to your bugle, incoherent soul, and when you feel your anger coming on or fits of passion, take them out on that."
Turning to the left, we journeyed on until we found the next one, fiercer still and yet more vast.
This lordly creature chose to test his strength against the highest might of Jupiter, and such is his reward. His name is Ephialtes. He it was who, when the giants terrorized the gods, took on himself the brunt of the attempt, and now he'll never move those active arms again. And you'll see, quite near to here, Antaeus, who can speak and is unbound. He'll set us down in sin's profoundest depths.
When we were deep within the murky pit, I saw in front of me and underneath my feet a lake, not watery, but changed by cold to glass. So these abject souls were set in ice, all blue below the point where shame appears, clicking their teeth as if to mimic stalks. As we went on towards that central point, I struck one with my foot, hard in the face. If fame is what you crave, it might prove worth your while if I include your name amongst my notes.
I crave the opposite.
At this, I grasped the hair that hid his neck and said, "You'd better tell me what you're called, or you'll be left without any scalp at all."
Go on, strip me till I'm bald. I'll never tell or show you who I am.
By then my hand had twisted up his hair and yanked away a tuft of it. A voice then cried,
"Baka, now what's wrong with you?"
"That's it," I said. "You need to say no more." Then I saw a pair iced up so firmly in one hole that one head wore the other for a cap. And like a starving man devouring bread, the upper one gnawed into him, below just where the brain pan meets the spinal cord. "Oh, you who hate the one off whom you dine, I'll make this bargain if you'll tell me why. Should your complaints have reasonable grounds, I, knowing both your names and his offence, shall recompense you in the world above."
"I was Count Ugolino, and this is Archbishop Ruggieri. Now I'll tell you why I'm his close neighbour here. How through his evil mind's manoeuvring, and I trusted him, was then taken prisoner and subsequently killed. One day I awoke and heard my children sobbing in their sleep as they begged for bread. After they'd woken up, the hour was near when our food was usually brought. Then I heard them nailing up the tower's door. My little Aslam said, 'Why, father, do you stare like that? What is wrong?' Upon which I sank my teeth into both hands, and they, assuming what I'd done was because of hunger, said, 'We'd suffer far less pain ourselves if, father, you would eat the meat from us. You clothed us, after all, in this sad flesh, so why not be the one to strip it off?' I then watched them throughout the 5th day, and then the 6th, as one by one they collapsed. And blind by then I took to groping round their dead bodies. For 2 whole days I called out their names, and then starvation did what grief could not."
Then, when we'd travelled on sufficiently, my master announced,
"Here is Dis. Now see the place where you'll need all your armoury and strength."
Don't ask me, reader, just how cold and faint I then became. I wasn't dead, nor was I quite alive. Imagine for yourself, if you possess an ounce of wit, the state I was in, deprived of both conditions at one time. The ruler of that empire of despair reared up with half his chest above the ice. How great was my amazement when I saw his 3-faced head, the one in front bright red.
It's time we went upon our way. We've seen it all. We must use such stairs to break away from so much wickedness.
We scrambled then through a fissure in the rock, and once he'd settled me upon its ledge, he worked his cautious way to join me there. My guide and I began that hidden route to journey back towards the shining world, not caring now to take a moment's rest. We climbed with him in front and me behind, till through a rounded aperture I caught some glimpse of those delights that heaven holds. And we emerged once more to see the stars.